My name's Will Wakeling. I'm the Dean of Libraries, and I'm happy to welcome you here today for this, the latest in our series of Meet the Author events. I want to thank, before we get any further, the members of the Libraries Programming and Communications Committee for all the work they've done putting together this and the other events in the series. And also, like specifically and especially, to thank NU Bookstore for their co-sponsorship of this program. Now, the Libraries Meet the Author series showcases authors whose works address current events and social issues, and it brings together faculty and staff, students and friends of the libraries to debate and discuss these issues. So one thing I don't want you to forget is that you can actually become a library supporter. It's a formal institution organization, and people will pass amongst you, either now or later today, telling you about the Library Supporters Program. Okay, commercial over. Now, it is a very great pleasure today to welcome our guest author, Michael Gates Gill. I don't think I can improve on the New York Times by way of an introduction, so excuse me if I plagiarize for a minute here. Michael Gates Gill, who once made about $160,000 a year as an advertising executive, and who now earns about $10.50 an hour making coffee at Starbucks, has written a book called How Starbucks Saved My Life. A son of privilege learns to live like everyone else. Like us, I guess it means. The book itself is so admiring of the firm, the New York Times say, that one fears he has drunk of the grande iced Kool-Aid. I further quote, his story, divorced, broke, entitled, middle-aged white guy with brain tumor and no health insurance, learns to respect people of other races who didn't go to Yale. His story has been optioned for filming by Tom Hanks, no less. One extremely interesting fact for me, certainly, was the discovery that Mr. Gill is the son of the author and New Yorker critic Brendan Gill. Many people in England of a certain age knew and know Brendan Gill less for his writing and more for his long-running appearance as the quintessential American intellectual on a famously complicated radio quiz show called Round Britain Quiz. This ran for years, and I can truthfully say that listening late at night to that show and to Brendan Gill's comments significantly shaped my view of America. So it's going to be entirely fascinating to find out today if Michael Gill is going to reshape our view of Starbucks. Let's ask him to talk to us anyhow. Okay, there you go. Blazer's a good idea, lots of pockets.
Yeah. Thank you, Will. That was such a wonderful introduction, because my father would have loved that so much, because I don't think there was anything in his life he loved more than that English show, which let me just spend a half hour, an hour, I'm just kidding, a few seconds describing it. It was brilliant people speaking more or less completely spontaneously about a variety of subjects that would just come in more or less impromptu. And it was very, very popular, and he loved it. And I think that captures the magic of his life, which was he was a brilliant writer, not just a good writer, but and at a brilliant magazine. The New Yorker magazine in his day was widely renowned as the greatest writing. But also he had that wonderful gift of not only being a great writer, but a great speaker. And I think that was a double gift for all of us. And I'm glad, obviously, if you're here today, something he must have said. Yeah, he was a little coy about it, but maybe you'll write your story, how Brendan Gill saved my life. But I want to say how grateful I am to be here today on this beautiful campus. I was saying to Will and to Maria, and by the way, thank you all for working so hard. Everyone who has, Gretchen, everybody, Andrew, and everybody here. Tricia greeted me on the campus. It was so good, because I was disoriented. Boston is tricky, and I got out of a car and I looked around and there was a sign saying Gill. I said, I recognize that name. And then I followed her, and it was like into this mysterious sort of labyrinth. But then I was greeted by a campus with birch trees and sunlight. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought of a more urban example, but it felt very much like country and beautiful and charm. And I'm so grateful that somebody did some magic here, because it feels so good to be here, and to be here also with my sister Kate. I have 5 sisters, so she's a representative today of that galaxy. And also with a person who went to school, Bronxville High School, with my other sister Holly. So I feel very, very at home here. And also they can be witnesses later to my testimonial. And I think that the whole point about my life is actually just, well, first of all, I have to start by saying also I'm just grateful to be alive. Because about 4 years ago I was diagnosed with this brain tumor. I'll have a few pieces of quick advice. One of them is, after 60, don't go into any physical or doctor. Don't see a doctor. Because after 50, something is bound to be wrong, right? And this doctor said to me, nothing serious, I'm sure, just have a quick MRI, It'll only take 20 minutes. Oh, this sounds okay, but then they wheeled me in, and then it took an hour or something. But then when I went back to his office, he approached me with a photograph, and he was smiling. And I said, whoa, what a relief. Because we always think when we go to, at least I do, when I go to doctor, it's going to be a death sentence. So he said, whoa, he's smiling. He approached me with the photograph, stuck it on the wall, said, wow, he said, this is so exciting. You have one of the rarest brain tumors in the world. Whoa, he's excited, but this isn't good news, He said, the great news is I'm authority on this. I've written papers on this. He started going back to his desk to grab some of the articles he'd written on this subject. And he said, and I'm a brain surgeon. I can operate tomorrow. I mean, he was so excited, and I had to tell him, I don't have any health insurance. So he sort of staggered, the little stutter you do. He was excited, but wait a minute. So we negotiated at that point, saying, well, if it's not affecting it affected my hearing a little bit, but it wasn't affecting my balance, etc. Maybe we could do another MRI in a couple of months. But that brought it home to me how fragile my life was. And that had just been sort of one more bad surprise in a series of accidents and bad surprises that started almost a decade ago, when I'd made that crucial career mistake. I'd worked in advertising for 26 years, and I'd grown old. By the way, you're not allowed to grow old in advertising. If any of you are thinking about going into that field, get out while you're still young, because eventually I got that call saying, I'd like to have breakfast with you, off-site, outside the office. Don't do it. It's like the mafia. Don't go to that meal. That's your last meal. So I was invited out of the company, that same breakfast. And then I did the usual thing of, the euphemism is I had a consulting firm, which would usually rely on previous friends, and then the friends retired and disappeared, and pretty soon no one was answering my calls. I'd still get all dressed up in a Brooks Brothers suit and, go to actually Starbucks stores, pretend I was making calls, but no one was answering. And it was scary. It's scary in America to have that silence. And I was in a silent state of depression and going downhill. In addition, my personal life, I got divorced. My whole life was coming down, and sadly, looking back on it, it's really sad, is that I couldn't do anything different. I'd been on this up escalator all my life, not only with a great father. I'd been given, affluent money, rich. I've been given an education. By the way, most of you in this room don't realize, in the old days, it was completely fixed about you could get into any college you wanted with an open checkbook. At Yale, you could get in if your father and grandfather, it was a welcome. Come on in. And it's so changed today. There's actually competition. But in my day, you were given that, and I was given my job. Once again, in those days, a small group of people actually did sort of run America, if not the world. And it turns out this Yale friend of mine had the biggest account at this advertising agency, which happened to be the biggest in the world, J. Walter Thompson, which was also, guess what, owned by a Yale gal, solely owned by a Yale man. There was no public company. So guess what? I got a job there, and I was promoted up. Why? Because I had the same background and education of all of us. We thought we were so great because we all looked in the mirror and said, hey, you're great, I'm great. We deserve six-figure salaries, big expense. You see how sad that is now, but for 26 years, and I can't say, by the way, I have to be honest, I can't say I would have gotten off the upward escalator unless I'd been pushed off. Right? But once I was pushed off, and then a series of things happened, and so I ended up, how sometimes when everything is almost too much to take, you go back to happy childhood memories in your mind, and that day in New York, it was a March day, I was depressed, it was sort of rainy, I went back to the old neighborhood, which to me, reminded me of my favorite place in the universe. So we had a brownstone, and I was a favorite son, and I looked around, I saw there was a new Starbucks store. They're springing up everywhere, I know, like mushrooms or something. But there was a new one there. I said, okay, I might be broke, I might have this brain tumor, I might have all these other problems, but I'm going to treat myself to a latte, yay! So I went in the store and I got a latte and went over to the table, and purely by accident, and this is, I think, another lesson in life, is that so many times just accidents can be transforming, but in a good way. And I walked over and I sat down next to this young woman who was 28 years old. She was someone I would never have talked to or ever thought of working with or hiring in a million years. I sat down and was sipping my latte, but it happened to be, there was a hiring event in that Starbucks store that day, and she looked over at me. She told me later she didn't know whether I was a customer or not, but she said, would you like a job? And suddenly that broke through my sort of cocoon of self-pity. And I said, yes, I would like a job. And she said, well, fill out this application. But I said, but then I did a really important thing. I cried for help. I said, well, I need your help to do this, because in my life, my favorite life, I never had to fill out a job application. I know it sounds grotesque, but I knew that if I just filled out an application for her, and it was a part of hundreds of others, I'd be lost, and I wouldn't get the job, which I really desperately needed. So she sat, and here's an act of kindness, because, by the way, when we had a minority hiring program at J. Walter Thompson once, where we were going to hire people with different backgrounds, educations, and none of us believed it would work, because you needed a certain education background to be like us, right? We only wanted to hire people just like us. And guess what? That minority hiring program we initiated failed. But she, who once again looked upon me and she said, oh, I'll help you with the application. Now, that's something I would never would have done. In my job interviews, I was always looking why they weren't good enough. And she was going to find a way to help me bridge that thing from my cocoon of self-pity to reality. So we sat down and she said, okay, let's sit down together and do this. So she said, okay, first question, let's just do an easy one. What's your retail experience? Whoa. So what do you mean by retail? Well, she said, like Walmart. I said, well, I've never been in a Walmart. I could tell I was going to lose her, so I remembered I'd done some crazy mission statement for Burger King, right? And I said, well, I'd worked with Burger King. She, hey, good, she said, Burger King. In other words, she was on my side. I really felt emotionally that was a turning point for me. And looking back, I think it definitely was. Someone who didn't know me and you know, is decades older, totally different background, and she took not pity, but also just she was going to help me make it. She said, well, write that down. Then a couple weeks later, she said, okay, Mike, do you want the job? I said, yes, yes. She said, meet me at my store at 93rd and Broadway. Now, I'd been on the east side of New York, Manhattan, my old neighborhood. I'd never gone to the west side. The west side is scary. Bad things can happen on the west side of Manhattan. You can get mugged, etc. You know. So I said, but I thought you were on the... No, she said, the managers just came in, but they come from all different stores. My store, do you want the job or not? She was getting, I think in that normal way, a little impatient with me. I mean, she'd made the effort. She was helped me with the application. Now, did I want it? So I showed up the next day, and I had my tan pants, and I had my suit, you know, what you're supposed to wear, and my shoes, and I was ready to go to work, and but I was scared. And when I walked in the room, I was even more scared, because there was all of these young 20-somethings running around. And by the way, it was clear I was going to be the minority. And instead of the tables were reversed on me, right? There's this old white guy, and whoa, and they're moving so fast. And they're calling the ventes, the lattes. Oh, once again, I have bad hearing in one ear because of this tumor thing. And I said, and I never was a good athlete. As you can testify, but like third string football was as good as I ever got. And if the coach ever let me off the bench, we were 50 points ahead in the game, you know. So I saw these people moving so fast, yelling the drinks, and also the registers, jing, you know, making change. And one of the reasons I was there was I was incompetent with money. From my earliest days, I couldn't handle it. And you know, so I suddenly, at first I thought, hey, Starbucks, that's way below me, right? This master of the universe. Then I realized it was a terrible moment of shock and awe in encountering this reality, which is, hey, this might be way beyond me. And I was scared because it's one thing to get fired from J. Walter Thompson. It's another thing to tell your friend, hey, I just fired from Starbucks after 2 hours. Whoa! How could I explain it even to myself? So I was sort of standing there frozen like, whoa, this is more than I even bargained. But Crystal came out, and it was a busy day, there was a line, but she came out right away, and she took my hand and she brought me over to a table, and she brought me delicious coffee. It was called Sumatra. It's still my favorite, but it was really good coffee. I've always, by the way, loved coffee. And so that was, but also an espresso brownie. And since I was a little boy, I love brownies. But anyway, she took those few moments to welcome me with coffee and brownies in a way that I never welcomed anyone in my previous life. In fact, in my wildest imagination, I could never have imagined getting coffee for anyone who worked for me, right? Yet she had, in the busy retail environment, she'd taken time to, in a sense, comfort me and reassure me. And then this guy walked in the door, and he was bigger than me and very formidable looking. He had, what do you call those, dewlaps or do-rags or whatever over his head and the earphones on and, you know, moving in. And she said, hey, Kester, come over, meet Mike. And Kester came over to the table, and she said, you're going to be his learning coach. I said, whoa, this is, you know, but then he gave me a big smile. And I realized, you know, Kester wasn't scared of me, so I shouldn't be scared of him. You know, he was going to make me do it. And it wasn't sort of make me do it, he just was reassuring me. Like, it wasn't easy, any of these things. I stayed away from the register as long as possible. You know, luckily, Crystal had cleaning problems in the store. She said, maybe I should call this a grout opportunity rather than a grout problem. But there's grout between the tiles. And she said, you know, would you willing? Hey, great. Now, I never cleaned anything in my life. I hadn't cleaned my office, my home, anything. But now I became this passionate cleaner, because that would be one more day I wouldn't have to get on the register, right? I wouldn't have to make those complicated drinks. So boy, did I clean that. I'm down on my hands and he's cleaning the ground. I'm so happy. Whoa, look at it. You know, another day without doing Crystal. And then she said, you know, I'm going to take you to the bathroom. I'll show you how to do that. And, you know, I discovered also there was a therapy in cleaning that, I mean, today I can detail a bathroom, I can polish a bathroom like a Ferrari. I mean, it's going to be sparkly. I mean, Crystal came over, she said, Mike, I've never seen anyone clean like you, you know. She said, I've never seen a bathroom. So I felt, wow. Because at that point in my life, I'd begun to feel like, do I have any value? At least I could be a great cleaner, right? And gradually, Kester and Crystal took me over to the register. By the way, today even registers and making conversation is a challenge, and then making the lattes. But I dropped milk once, and Crystal would say, well, don't worry, everyone drops the milk. You see, I was in a universe of helping people. I don't know whether you've worked in corporate life or advertising, but it's like a game of musical chairs where they're continually taking one away and someone drops on their butt, and then not everyone laughs exactly, but everyone's pleased, because that means it's a limited pyramid where to get ahead and get the ultimate rewards and recognition, you have to step on or around other people, right? It's a limited universe. Where what I discovered at Starbucks is they wanted me to succeed. You know how good that felt? They wanted me, and they were confident I could do it, and they needed me to do it, because they had a, you know, you had to, three of you opening on a store. I had to get the pastries out right. I had to help with the coffee. So they, in a sense, that will, that attitude was all the difference. Right? That made all the difference to me. And actually I did, except the other day, I have to just be, it's hard for a former advertising guy to be completely honest, but just the other day, this woman came up to me and said, you know, I have a double tall, you know, 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla, non-fat, and, you know, extra hot, no foam latte. So I was writing, you know, I had it all down, and getting the 2 pumps rather than 3 pumps, and you know, making the hot milk, and, you know, no foam. And I handed it back to her, and she came back a couple of seconds later and said, Mike, I think you've forgotten something. I said, what? I worked so hard. She said, the coffee. There's no coffee here. Whoa. I had forgotten to drop the espresso shots. So I'm still, this is 3.5 years later, I'm still, I would say, mentally, emotionally, I'm challenged by the actual engagement. But isn't that good for me? Because that is also living in the present. I mean, and maybe I should have written the book Zen and the Art of Coffee Making. But, you know, if you're living in the present, you can't really worry about the past or even worry about, you know, and there's a wonderful sports feeling to being in the present. And also that I did learn I could do something. I love coffee and I love reading about history. So they made me what they call a coffee master. You get a black apron like taekwondo, you know. But basically the role is it's I think the easiest of the store. Maybe that's why they encourage me in this direction. Someone asked the other day, have you ever been, you know, promoted to manager or shift? No one's ever asked me. I don't know why. Isn't that mysterious? But they said Coffee Master was perfect for me because I could talk about the coffee. You serve little samples and pastries, so you can serve, and then you can talk forever about it. And I love doing that, and I love the history of it. So they said Coffee Master. And by the way, I remember my father, when he introduced me to Frank Lloyd Wright, saying, you know, his disciples all called him the master. So I'm not an architectural master of the rank of Frank Lloyd Wright, but I sure am a good coffee master. So I found my role, and if you visit me in the store, you will find me being a coffee master and also cleaning like crazy. I can still do those things really well. But it's such a relief for me. I open at 5 a.m., and I can't say I leap out of bed at 4 a.m. because I'm 67 years old, and I still creep out, and there's, pains you don't want to admit. But I can go to my store, and at 5 a.m. we share coffee, we have the interchange. There's laughter every day among the partners, but also the guests. And those crazy drinks, I thought they were nuts to say ventes and wide grande, because in advertising we learned make it as easy as possible for something to buy, someone to buy something. It seemed like, why are you doing this? I mean, I actually, even though I had been, anxious about my job, I tried to say, couldn't we make it easier for, that arrogance? What I learned is the guests actually enjoy it as much as I enjoy it. If they just said coffee 100 times a day to me, I'd be, a large coffee, boom, that would be boring. Each guest has their own individual special drink. A lady came in the other day, she said, okay, decaf, she's pregnant, she got decaf and double tall and all this stuff, and she said, this is the one place, she was pregnant, she had 2 other children with her, one place in my life where I get things exactly like I want it. So, it doesn't make sense. It takes those extra minutes or seconds. Most fast food places just want to get you, take a number, 1, 3, make it as, we want to make it individual as possible. Because that is, I think that's a secret. That it's sort of like respect, isn't it? Respect, by the way, was never mentioned in my 26 years at advertising for consumers or ourselves. But respect is the first principle at Starbucks, and what they mean by that is, well, when I was trying, after being there a couple months, they said you can be a learning coach too, like Kester or something. But they said you have to learn how other people learn, not how you learn. So you say, some people learn by reading, some by this, some by doing, and they said, so that's the whole thing. When I was at J. Thomas, we taught people the way we wanted to work, right? You do this the way I do it. We're so great. And it was like learn, and that plays out for the guests ordering their own drinks. You see them come in and they're uptight and they're showed. By the time they've ordered their venti, non-fat latte, they're more relaxed, and then they hear it called out and they call it back. It's almost like a chorus of participation in creating enjoyment. My previous title was creative director at advertising. I still don't know quite what that means. It means you get other people to do the work, really, basically. So, but I'm creating, I feel like now, and all of my partners are, and we're all creating these little moments of pleasure for, say, that pregnant lady who, in her life, is so busy. She has a little moment of, she can smile and laugh and hear and be participatory in those little moments. And I feel that those little moments of enjoyment that we create for each other, just looking in their eyes. For example, someone asked me, I was on this show with Emily Rooney, and she said, well, what about the race thing in class, all genders and ages? If I'd retired, if I hadn't been thrown off that upward escalator and gone to a country club, say the country club in Boston or something with my buddies, we would have decided, hey, it's crazy to get people from different genders and races and cultures and ages, right, to work together. You can't do it. And what a sad, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I was pushed off. And hopefully some of you who are much younger and have your whole lives, if you ever get in a box, if you ever get stuck like that, you won't just keep repeating yourself. You'll leap to this new life, because what I discovered is it's the individual, just like that, going back to that individual drink, it's the individual, Crystal understanding me or Kester working with me, how I learn. It's everybody looking in their eyes saying, this individual, and that trumps everything. There are 3 of us opening or 3 of us closing, and it doesn't really matter about where the education and background and all this stuff is. It really matters who, it sounds so obvious. Isn't it sad? It took me over 60 years to really believe it, but it happens every shift. Every shift. So it couldn't be that mysterious. It starts, I think, with that respect. And then when I leave after opening, say at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is a little unfair to say this to you, because most of you will probably do full-time jobs. I got a part-time job with full health benefits. Isn't that amazing? It's the only bizarre company. I still don't know how. By the way, I'm just a barista, so I'm not a representative of how Starbucks business, but still, what a gift, huh? And for all my partners, the other day, a partner came and said she'd gone to the eye doctor for the first time in her life. She'd say, Mike, I can see. Many partners have dental work done. They never, and they're 18, 19, we never would have considered this dental work because it's just too expensive. Now, They're piling in. Almost everyone's having their wisdom teeth taken, stuff that some of us would have done much earlier, right? But at least they're getting a chance. They get stock options. After 90 days, you start getting stock and stock options and more information about it than I can decipher. But what a great thing for when you're 20-something, getting into that financial thing of here's your IRA, here's your stock option, please, when are you going to exercise? The other day I had an email, please exercise your stock. I mean, more stuff than I ever had as a senior executive. More health benefits, stocks, but mainly the feeling of we care about you as a person. There's a person who comes by Starbucks, a senior person who just his sole role is to ask, are you happy every couple months? Now, I never asked anybody if they were happy. That's dangerous, right? Hey, I want a raise, I wanted this. And he said, well, I said, and I said, well, I'm very happy, I don't want to leave here. He said, well, but you've got to, you live in Bronxville, it makes more sense. It was an hour and a half commute, it was $100 a month. And I said, no, I'm happy here. But then Crystal talking to me, she said, by the way, you can stay here as long, I want you to stay here. But with $100 a month and an hour and a half, 3-hour commute, both ways, wouldn't it make more sense? But she said, let's do this. Let's just try it. If in 2 weeks you don't want it, you can come back. By the way, she told me last week I can come back too, anytime I want. But isn't that a great thing? And now I can walk to work, another luxury. So I have a part-time job. I get up, as I said, crawl up. Get over there at 5 a.m., 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I walk away. I don't, my previous job at 12 hours a day, flying 100,000 miles, but I was always thinking about it. So even when I was, say, playing with my kids, I wouldn't be there in the way I'm there when I can just walk out the door. I can listen to music. I can read a book. I don't think I could have written this book without that gift of my own time. Part-time job sort of gave me that life, my life back. And I think that's such a gift, and to offer all those great things to part-time people is another gift. And one night, after cleaning up and getting out and closing, I put my hand on my heart and said, I'm happier than I've ever been. Now, I didn't have that big superstructure of a life. For example, in Bronxville now, I'm living in a renovated attic, but I love it. When I come back, there's nothing there. I bought some picnic furniture. I think it cost $5 a piece for the chairs, maybe $15 for the white, those white plastic things, but they're easy to clean. And I come back, and you can testify, there are people who can testify, I grew up in this big, 20-something room house with a gymnasium and with all the stuff you could possibly, I can't tell you how buoyant and free I feel to come back to this little place, plastic furniture, and freedom. Freedom from having to support the illusion that I'm master of the universe, that I can control my life. And putting I think that's, it's mysterious to me why I am so happy. Some bizarre thing happened recently with that Tom Hanks called and said he'd like to play me in a movie, right? That is the ultimate sort of, I don't know, I can't really still deal with that. Because my life, I was writing the screen, we all write our own scripts, and mine was not going to end with Tom Hanks playing me in a movie, But I think what he said, and Gus Van Sant, who's going to direct it, he did Good Will Hunting, that great movie set in Boston. And Gus said what he appealed to him, and they get thousands of scripts, every week or day or whatever, is that the idea you can go to a whole new life that you never imagined. Because in America, we like to plan our life. We're going to work here for so many years. I'm going to do this and that. He said it was so great to feel like you can go to a whole new life. Because I never imagined I'd be so happy wearing a green apron and a black baseball cap and all that stuff and serving coffee. Because I like to think I was serving. It's so much more fulfilling to serve. But they love the idea that you could, something they had never imagined or that anyone could imagine, and you go to that life and then you're happier than you've ever been. And that's where I stand before you today, that having given up all that stuff, I've discovered all this new world, which is, when my kids came in, after, I was sort of like, what is a nice word for jerk? Most of the time they were growing up, especially about advice. I was never, I was always free with advice from this pontificating Olympian stance, right? About everything, like I deserve it. And they said, you don't really get it. And so they came in and they saw me struggling to keep up and do all that stuff, and they finally said, you're finally getting it. But there's a whole reality world out there, which is so, I would have to say, loving and supportive and exciting. It doesn't have to be Starbucks, but there's, I think the lesson is, if you get in a box and you get stuck, we say in America you should look before you leap. I think the lesson of my life is you should leap before you look, because I couldn't have figured my way out. I couldn't have thought my way out. There was no rational way out. But that gift of a kindness and also being open to that, that spontaneous, and hopefully I did it out of desperation. Hopefully everybody here in this room could do it out of courage and just say, I'm leaping. The next spontaneous moment where that sunlight hits me and I feel like this, it might not make sense. It might not make sense, but it makes so much, it feels so good, and it makes me happy. And those internal measurements, put your hand on your heart and say, I feel happier than I've ever been. And part of my happiness is sharing this story with you. My daughter Annie, when I was going through all this bad stuff, she said, why don't you keep a journal? This is before Starbucks. So before I went to bed at night, I wrote a couple of sentences down. And after about a year at Starbucks, I said, this is a story worth sharing. And then another serendipitous thing, I had a latte with someone, they agreed, etc. But I think the lesson for all of you is don't waste 60 years. If you're not happy today, if you feel frustrated, if you feel like you're in a box repeating yourself, leap, don't look. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. I know Michael said he's very happy for a discussion, open conversation. Indeed, you've said you've almost no limit on your time as long as you get to New Haven by 7 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, really. No, thank you, Will. Yeah. No, I'd be happy to take questions now, and also I'd be happy to stay as long as you want one-on-one later. But are there any questions? Yes.
Can you please go up to the mic because we're recording?
Oh, could you talk in the mic? Apparently they're recording it, so you know this is yeah. This really confirms with your really serious question, right? That you walk up to the mic.
Yeah, you spend most of your life, a lot of your life, hanging around rich people.
Yeah.
Rich people. And all of a sudden you're working with people who make $15,000, $20,000 a year
Yeah.
at best.
Yeah.
And in this country, when you're making $15,000, $20,000 a year, you're living a life of struggle.
Right.
You're one paycheck to another.
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Being gone from an entirely different economic
Right.
strata.
Right.
And to get in touch with the struggles those people have to live with.
Right. Well, that was a great, you know, I have on the first chapter, I have, you know, Wynton Marsalis, they put these little things in the cups, and it says, only the humble improve. I'm a humble. I can't claim improvement. By the way, I'm not a Dalai Lama. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not a management guru. But I can tell you that it was humbling to realize that every day my partners were going through much more difficulties. One day, Charlie, who was this guy creating a music business, by the way, they'd all be much more excited, I think, if I'd done a music CD, you know, because most of them are music is real exciting for them. But, you know, Charlie came in and said, you know, a cousin of his had just had a terrible experience. I said, what happened? Well, on the way to school, she's 15, they got into a fight with another, and a friend of hers had stabbed someone in the chest and killed her. So Charlie said, not his niece or something, not his cousin, but her best friend. So her life was over, he said. Her life is over now. She killed somebody at 15, and despite, so that was on the way to work. That was in that neighborhood that he lives in. Or the other day, this young single mother in my store in Bronxville said, you know, she's ambivalent about the father of her child coming back because he just, you know, spent 5 years in jail. So, you know, she'd like him to be back in their lives, but not living with them. That kind of. So my problems were what you call champagne problems, and the fact is they're getting educated. Like Crystal, she was excited by the book, but she's really excited by the movie. She says, "I want Halle Berry to play me in the movie," you know. But she also said to me, well, I kept. By the way, that's not her real name because she did want privacy. She said, "I hope you didn't put in about my fur coat." Because the managers of these stores, by the way, because of Starbucks, I think expanding universe theory of life versus limited, she's been there 7 or 8, they do pretty well. But the part-timers are also of there's a young man from Jackson, Mississippi, got a scholarship to Sarah Lawrence College. He just put on a musical where he directed, wrote, he didn't start it, but he directed and wrote a musical, which he invited me to come to. So I'm sitting watching a musical by a partner. And he's got a scholarship, but he's also working at Starbucks, you know, to help him get on with life. But he feels he loves Starbucks, but so there's a whole range of people, and that's the main thing. It's not any generalization you can make about anybody. There's a young woman from Panama who takes time off to be a missionary here in America because she's got a different theory about our culture values here. You know, we're so proud of it, but she's got a little different angle on it. So she spends Sunday afternoons talking to people about Panama and so in other words, there's a whole range of life out there. So it's not one thing or another, but it's certainly been humbling to me because I realized pride myself on managing people, which is really manipulating people. But Crystal and these other people are so much better because they treat people with that respect, right? So I'm learning every day. Every day I learn from my partners more about life, but also just more about how to enjoy life, because there's laughter. You know, if they're not taking it seriously, their challenges, why should I be so serious and heavy about mine? You know, it helps perspective. And is there another question? I'll answer them shorter. Yes, yes, sir.
Actually, you started to say this, the last thing you said about laughter. My question is, when you were in your other life, did you have the same sense of humor?
Yeah.
Passion for that job, or is this sense of humor grown from this job at Starbucks?
No, I think I had a sense of humor. I went to the Pentagon once. You know, to start a presentation, we were like 7 out of 7 agencies, and they were looking for somebody to do their combined recruiting. I was involved with the Marine Corps, you know, the Few Good Men campaign. So we were invited, and I said, if we're 7 and we're the last ones, we gotta wake up. And there was a combined Joint Chiefs of Staffs, General this, Admiral this, you know, Commandant that. So I brought in a bow and arrow. I wanted to lighten it up. I figured I could get their attention, and I had this target put at the end of the room, and I shot it, you know. And bang, you know, it woke them up. But they said, how do you get a weapon into the Pentagon? Okay, hey, this is too good. You know, you all have to go somewhere, so this is maybe, I just got to be very quick about it. This is my favorite presentation I made. In other words, it was sort of an anarchistic humor. But there was this, U.S. Air was called Allegheny Airlines. I wanted to change the name because I said Agony Airlines. It was a joke, you know, and U.S. Air, but all research said people would wait half an hour to go on U.S. Airways that didn't exist, right? Rather than fly on Allegheny. Sound like you're going to fly into the Allegheny, whatever it was. But the chairman, who was 70-something, didn't buy it, you know, and all the board of directors, oh, no, no, you know, so I got up before a sales force, say 500 people once, and I said I'm not a good athlete, but I decided to hit a baseball out of the park would be a way. I said, we're going to knock the competition out of the park. I threw up a by the way, isn't it great about the Red Sox? Whoa. You know, by the way, you know, there's a guy, we told him guests that come in. One of the guys came in as a doctor, and he said his medical roommate, when he was in Boston, this is in New York, because one day he was wearing a Red Sox cap and a Yankee shirt. I said, what, there's something wrong here. Has he got schizophrenia? You know, what's going on here? But he said, well, I promised my roommate this one. In that 1 year, the Red Sox won the series. So here's another winning year for the Red Sox. Where was it? Oh, yeah. So I threw up the baseball, because there is a baseball link. Yay. I threw up the baseball. I hit it as hard as I could. I wanted to do, you know, high pop fly. Say the room was 100 yards long. It was an airplane hangar. But instead, I hit it just like this, you know, right on your eye level. And the chairman, who was sitting in the front row, he hit the ground. You know, you can imagine the sales force loved that because they said it didn't like the chairman, you know. Yeah! So we sold a new name, you know. So anyway, yeah, I've always had a sense of humor, but I've never felt so good because this humor I get now is that I feel like people, if I can get people to laugh and smile on both sides of the counter, that in a sense, I've created a few moments of enjoyment. Rather than rush, 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 which I never did before, you know. Is there one more question, and then I'll take any, yes? Make this a softball, as they call it in questioning.
Well, I'm not sure about this question. But I just wanted to tell you thank you for coming. I think you have given a wonderful, inspirational story that you shared with us. And I think that's really good. I'm a Starbucks freak. I go there every day, and I agree with the attitude wherever I go in Starbucks. I like their spirit. I have a story. I'll try to make this brief. It's a question that's sort of the reverse of your own story. I have an interracial nephew who was born and raised in Las Vegas, and he unfortunately got into the wrong crowd as a young man and in his late teens. So we sent him off to live with his older brother a few years ago in Phoenix. And Jimmy got back on his feet. He got off of drugs and went to a Starbucks to start at the lowest level and worked himself up to a managerial position. Well, unfortunately, just a couple of weeks ago, he came back to Las Vegas to try to settle some business. He got right back in with his druggy friends. And now he's up on Mount Charleston in a rehab. And I told my sister, his mother, that I was coming to this talk and I wanted to buy your book and read your story. Now I'm wondering if you could just maybe point me, if you could think of some part of your book that might be inspirational to Jimmy as far as maybe going back to Starbucks or having something to look forward to after the rehab.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. By the way, I'll stay as long as you want and take any more questions one-on-one. But I think, yeah, I can't promise that this book is going to, have an immediate transformative experience on it. But I think if he did read the book, and I'd be happy to talk to him about it. I think the way to do it would be more face-to-face. So like I think that my sitting down with him would be, the test would be, would he be willing to read the book? If he's willing to read the book, this sounds almost like a negotiation, but I think that's the best way to do it, because sometimes it's a test of seriousness. If he's willing to read the book, then I'd be willing to come and sit down with him and talk to him about it.
I'll talk to you later about your next trip to Las Vegas.
Oh, my next trip to Las Vegas. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and anyway, thank you so much for coming in. I know how busy you all are. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and plenty of supplies of books outside.
Oh yeah, I'll
Signed by the author.
I'll sign books and answer questions as long as you'd like.